Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to Sign for More Injury Funding Podcast, the podcast for all who want to learn about legal funding and its significance in personal injury, medical malpractice, workers' compensation, trucking law, ride share, and all other types of law practice domains. I'm your host, Laura, founder and CEO of More Injury Funding, the legal funding counselors with passion for law, medicine, legal funding, and heart for all suffering individuals. In today's episode, I have an honor to be talking to the trial attorney, Geoff Pope, founding and managing partner of Pope Trial Law based in Atlanta, Georgia. Um,
Thank you. Thank you very much, Laura. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast. I've enjoyed listening to it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening. So Geoff Pope, named the Georgia super lawyer for 18 years, is ready to use his 25 years experience in medical negligence and catastrophic personal injury cases for his clients. Since earning his Juris Doctor cum laude from University of Georgia School of Law in 1993.
That's right.
Geoff has advocated for individuals and families harmed by wrongful conduct. Today, we will be talking about building trust and communication in personal injury law while supporting catastrophically injured clients. At the end of our episode, I prepared fun pop-up questions, so stay tuned. So again, without further ado, let me introduce the trial attorney, Geoff Pope.
Well, thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate you having me on the show, and I look forward to talking with you.
So, Geoff, we often hear that trial attorneys, they say it's very important when you're an attorney, and especially a trial attorney, to understand your clients and get to know them on individual personal basis. Why do you believe it's crucial to get to know your clients on deeply personal level beyond just the facts of the case?
I think it's important for many, many different reasons. First of all, a lawsuit is an incredibly stressful process. And the lawyer presumably knows what's going to happen in the lawsuit and can guide the client through. And in order to have a successful team, the client needs to trust the lawyer. Mm-hmm. And so to get to know the client on a deeply personal level can help build that trust. So they trust you to make legal decisions, to talk to them about the case. If there's a settlement opportunity, does it make sense to take the settlement offer or not? So that's one area of why it's very important. But then the presentation of the case is absolutely critical to get to know the client, because the same injury for two different people are two entirely different injuries. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean, if you and I both suffer the same spinal cord injury, it will affect us differently because we're different people. Absolutely. And so to tell the story about your injury, you have to know you. Mm-hmm. And you have to get to know you very, very well. Because the truth is, a lot of us, we don't like to talk about our weaknesses. We want to talk about our strengths. And if you've had a catastrophic injury, you almost necessarily feel some level of weakness because you can't do what you used to be able to.
Absolutely. Can you share maybe an example or a few of a case where understanding the client personally made a significant difference in how you approach their case?
Sure. I think that every case, that dynamic is in play, where you need to understand the client and you can get the client to talk about their situation. That can make a huge difference. Mm-hmm. Let me offer a couple of examples of one. And this is fairly common in a brain injury situation. And that is, someone with a brain injury might be able to do a lot of things, but they've got a number of deficits. And so you don't want to talk to that person about, well, you can't even balance your checkbook anymore. You don't want to talk about that to them. You want them to feel good about themselves. And so the family often will work hard to support that person and allow them to think that maybe they're a little more capable than they really are. Mm-hmm. And so it's, I think, critical in those situations to, number one, honor the family's trust by not making the injured person feel bad about themselves. And number two, you still have to tell the story. And so you tell that through other people. And I'll give you an example of it. I represented a a husband and wife. The husband had a horrible mishap that caused him to suffer what is, I think, horribly termed a mild traumatic brain injury. Not much mild about a brain injury, but he lost he had a brain injury, and I met with them together, and you could tell he was very funny and witty, but you could tell that something wasn't quite the same. And I thought, I've got to meet his wife, just her, not with him. So we set up a time we could go to lunch and in a private kind of restaurant area and talk to her. And she opened up. And this guy that had been a business success, a man's man, now couldn't balance his checkbook. She had to do all of his financial stuff. He couldn't remember when he was supposed to go to the doctor, take his medication. And it was devastating to her to see her husband that she loved and admired and still loved and admired in this kind of situation. And so getting to know her and getting her to feel comfortable that she could trust me, that I wasn't going to talk, I was going to protect her husband's view of himself, I think was critical, because she was then able, in her deposition, we had the husband not be present, and it was one of the most powerful stories I've ever heard when she's describing her husband in a long-term care facility, in a rehab facility, the questioning, which no one likes to admit, but everybody does, is, would it have been better if he hadn't have made it? And she opened up, and that made a tremendous difference, because that showed that the negligence that impacted the husband so obviously really had a profound impact on the wife as well.
These cases are so devastating, and you as a trial attorney, probably feel the need and an obligation to for them to feel validated and preserve their dignity. And it's a special skill.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the ways you can do that and preserve the dignity that we like to do is focus on the positive, focus on what someone can do, because it's so inspiring to me to represent people who've had these catastrophic injuries. They will, most of the time, I come away thinking, my goodness, I hope this never happens to me. But if it does, I hope I respond like this family or this person. And so we focus on the accomplishments they've made. And that might be being able to walk 10 feet without a walker. And that can be a tremendous accomplishment. And so we try to focus on that with our clients.
I love that. Let's talk about breaking barriers for a minute. Can you share common ways you've personally found clients protect themselves emotionally after severe injury? How do you approach this?
So I think they do. We all protect ourselves. We all have things in our past that are hurtful or harmful. It could be a physical injury. It could be, some relationship or divorce, something with our parents, something in our past. And the way we protect it ourselves, we can't live in that trauma our whole life. So we ball it up. And if we haven't learned how to deal with it through therapy or through whatever, that can come out in so many different ways. And that happens, with our clients. They will protect themselves by often not acknowledging the extent of their injuries, by thinking they're going to do better than they really are. I had another brain injury case, a young man who had a very severe brain injury. He could talk, but he didn't have the neuropsychological testing showed the various cognitive deficits. He had serious motor deficits. He was convinced he was going to end up going into real estate investing. And he did not want to acknowledge the problem. And that's fine. That's, I hope he does end up in real estate investing, and the neuropsych people are wrong. But so not wanting to acknowledge the problem is one of the ways that we protect ourselves. And then the other dynamic that we see from the family members, and I know you're a parent, you'll appreciate this. It's definitely true in cases involving injuries to children, whether it's through birth injury at the hospital or a car wreck or whatever. We want to blame ourselves for whatever happened to our child. We want to feel like we had the power to change it. And in almost any situation, you can go back and pick something you could have done differently. And that's a way that parents we both, because we feel that way, we don't ever talk about it. Mm-hmm. And it can be really challenging to get parents to talk in more, deeply about what happened and choices they made. And so those are two ways that people can protect themselves, by minimizing their own problem, and then by not dealing with the fact that they feel this tremendous guilt that is real. And even when any objective observer would say, why would you blame yourself for that? If you're a parent, you're going to blame yourself when something happens to your child.
Have you encountered any clients, Geoff, who were particularly guarded, in comparison to others? And if so, how did you manage to break through their defense mechanisms?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have. And, one of the ones that comes to mind was a mother who, during her pregnancy, the doctor had prescribed a blood pressure. She was on a blood pressure medication that pregnant women aren't supposed to take. Mm-hmm. And her obstetrician didn't stop it. And she kept taking it. And she felt horrible about what happened to her child, because there are all kind of things you can think of that you could do if you could read, research yourself, whatever. And it was really a challenge to get her to open up and talk about it, because that feeling of guilt that I don't think was deserved at all, it shaped every interaction, and we had to work through that and get her to feel comfortable being open with us. And I remember in that case we used a consultant who, sometimes it's easier to talk to somebody that's different. If Geoff the lawyer is always asking these questions, sometimes it's easier to get someone else involved. Absolutely. That can. And so we did that in that particular case. And it's not, I'm not suggesting that we were able to get her to have this amazing emotional breakthrough. She was always very guarded, but that's partly her personality. We ended up getting a great result at trial for her child.
That's wonderful. How long ago did you handle that case?
That case went to trial in 2019. So that was about 5 years ago. 5 years ago. But it's, there are many other cases that have similar dynamics where we have to work to get the clients to open up. And I think it's a multi-layer process. A lot of things go into that.
I can only imagine. Geoff, you mentioned visiting clients at their homes. How does this approach health and building trust, and what insights have you gained from these visits?
So I think visiting clients in their homes is essential for many, many reasons. Often our clients are, it's very difficult for them to get to an office or go somewhere because they have mobility issues. But when you go to someone's home, I think you do a few things. A client who's never dealt with a lawyer in their life and has just had the worst thing that's ever happened to them, you don't want to come into my fancy office and sit behind this beautiful conference room table and create this barrier between us, and I will ask you questions. That can be very
intimidating.
It's intimidating, and it's you as the lawyer are the other. You're the person they go to see. Mm-hmm. And I think when you go to their home, there's something about being in someone's home where you're more comfortable in your home, and because you as a lawyer can fit in their home, whatever it is. It might, we have clients that have incredibly fancy homes, and in clients that have, not very nice homes. Whatever the situation, you show that you fit in, they become more comfortable with you.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I think that's critical about going to the home is you just learn so much more about someone. The pictures on the wall, whatever's outside. I mean, I'd go into a client's home case I tried a year ago. I didn't realize they raised chickens, and that's just, I don't think we brought that out, but it was a connection that we were able to, those sorts of little things that can come up that can make a big difference in your relationship with your client.
Makes a huge difference. In your experience, are catastrophically injured clients typically open to discussing their injuries? What strategies do you use to encourage them to share their experience, to open up, to feel comfortable with you?
So I think that catastrophically injured clients are, to an extent, open to talking about their injuries. If you think about whatever, I mean, we've all had some kind of medical issue or some kind of injury, and you can talk about it. Oh yeah, I had whatever it is, and you can talk about it, but there's a point where you want to close up. And I think at some point, most catastrophically injured people, understandably, they most of the time they want to get better, and so they will focus on getting better. And so it's often, and understandable, that they don't think that often about all the horrible things that happened to them to get to the point they are now. To get to the, like the story I told earlier about the husband and the husband who had a long rehab course where the wife tells these just, he's going to the bathroom on himself and her, and just awful things, to this person that if you saw him right now, he's a nice looking man. He's witty. He's got limitations, but you probably wouldn't know it. And he doesn't want to think back to that time, and she doesn't want to think back to it either. They'd rather focus on what's positive. And so that's one of the things that we encounter a lot.
That's a good approach, staying positive no matter what. What are some topics or questions, Geoff, that have been proven in your experience to be effective in helping clients feel comfortable? And we touched someone on it already.
Yeah. So here's what I think. I think that it is it's kind of a holistic approach. The clients, you as the lawyer need to make them feel comfortable. You as the lawyer need to genuinely care about them. And they can tell if you are doing a checklist, just getting information, versus you really are interested in them and care about them. That's one step. Another step is, often in the course of a case, we will do things for the case that can also help them. For instance, a lot of life care planners are rehabilitation professionals, and they can help out. And so we try to help facilitate, those relationships. And then I think it's important to keep in mind that often the lawyer is not the person that speaks with the client the most. Mm-hmm. Often it's a staff member. And I am so lucky to have two staff members who clients just universally love. Mm-hmm. They care because my two paralegals they're not only fantastic paralegals, but they're just good people that really care about the clients. And I always get compliments on them. And so I think the overall relationship is informed by so many different aspects. And so I don't think there's any one thing. I think it's all of those things.
And I can attest to the wonderful team that you have, because I had a conversation with one of the girls today. And, as soon as I send that email, she responds within a few seconds. She works just like me. I love it. Yeah. When building trust, Geoff, what specific techniques do you employ to build trust with your clients? Do you have any techniques? And I would imagine your own vulnerability plays a role in this process.
I think you're right. I mean, I don't look at it like, okay, techniques, let me go. I'm talking to someone, I'm going to use this technique. Mm-hmm. But I think you're right that I think you have to know yourself. Mm-hmm. You have to know how you are going to react to situations. I know that I don't do well when other people are very anxious. And I spent more time trying to explore where that comes from. And I've got a little bit of a handle on it now. I want to protect them, and I've got to know that about myself, because if I let that, my desire to protect them, I might come across as minimizing their issue. So I think number one, the technique is, yourself. You have to know yourself so that you can find the part of you that resonates with what's going on with the client or the client's family. And then I think that being a good listener, focusing, not talking to them and checking your phone all the time, which everybody knows that, but it's a lot harder to said than done.
So much so.
And then I think there are some things that I do. A lot of it is through the Trial Lawyers College, which you may be familiar with. We might do some reenactments. We might do some of the listening exercises are very helpful because they help me listen carefully and maintain focus. And I think all that's important. You don't know when you lose focus and start thinking about your grocery list, that can really impact somebody. Well, this is a guy that's supposed to fight for me, and he's not even paying attention.
And Geoff, how long have you been practicing?
Me, a little over 30 years now.
30 years. That's a long time.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you've always been handling similar cases, or same type of cases? I
started out the first 6 years. I was at a defense firm where we defended largely medical negligence cases, but also Michelin Tire Company was one of our big clients. We did car wreck tire cases, and insurance disability cases, a variety of different types of things. And then after that, I went to the plaintiff side to a firm that's no longer there, but it was one of the top plaintiffs firms in the state. When I went there in 2000, I was really lucky to get to work with Dr. Meyer Shields, Canfield, Knowles, and Devine, and got to work with them for 4 or 5 years before leaving and doing my own thing.
You have a lot of experience, and you only practice within Georgia, or do you take cases outside?
I would take cases wherever. If you take a case outside of Georgia, I would need to have a lawyer that's licensed in that state, but I would, and have done cases outside of Georgia. But by and large, Georgia is where we practice.
Okay. How important do you believe is to engage with family members and friends of the injured client or person? Do you have any stories, where you learned something valuable from a family member that helped with a case, or maybe a neighbor, or somebody related in some way to your client?
I think that's you have to engage the family members, the friends, the neighbors, for a number of reasons. One, just from a persuasion standpoint, jurors are people, don't like to hear somebody talk about how awful their life is. They want to hear how you're working to make it better, because that's what we all want to hear. That's what we're inspired by. And so often the family member or the friend or the coworker is a much better source for talking about how limited the person is, what the person used to do, and now what they can't do. How I saw them, a little story. I saw them trying to watch their son's, baseball game, and he had to stay in the car, 100 yards away, and he really couldn't be a part of it. Things like that can be very powerful, because they can tell the complete story without the client having to, come across as a whiner. And plus, the other thing is that, if you want to know the bad things too. Mm-hmm. And so if there's something that is not good about the situation, the client, whatever it is, family members or someone else might know. And I've unfortunately, had those situations as well, where you need to talk to the family members to find out whatever it is. So I think those are critical.
And this area of law that you practice is very stressful, very complex, very stressful, very lengthy. How do you manage your own stress?
My wife might say not well. So I think that, I think that for me, exercise and I do some yoga and stuff like that. And my faith is important to me. And I think I'm just lucky to have a family that's supportive. But you're right. You're going to have stressful times, and you have people counting on you. And I'd like to think, oh, I'm always going to come through for them and get them this great result. But there are good lawyers on the other side, and you don't always win the case. And thankfully, haven't had very many of those bad outcomes, but they're there, and it can be really difficult.
We're talking about faith. I don't know if you all can hear, and you couldn't see, but you hopefully heard some church bells ringing. But that reminds me of my grandma's countryside where I used to spend a lot of time, and just calms me down as well. It's amazing. So, you mentioned you see clients in their homes, in their own environment. How does observing a client in their home influence your understanding of the situation and their needs?
Well, I think home versus your office, you don't have the basic, you have a little bit, but not, you can't go watch, how do you get in and out of the shower? What kind of adaptive devices do you have? How do you use those things? Okay, let's go for a walk on the sidewalk and see. I can remember I told you about a client the guy that wanted to be a real estate investor, that according to the neuropsychs, that's just never going to happen. We went for a walk on his sidewalk, and that was kind of something he used to do. And his mom was with him, and he and I had to walk side by side so that we could grab him if he stumbled, because his balance was so poor. And that was the kind of insight that it's hard to get it's just one of those little insights that you pick up from being there. And so I think you see what their life is like, and you also end up seeing the pictures they've got displayed. Who's that person? What's the story here? There might be somebody that lives there that they would have never thought to bring to the office that you get to talk to, and you learn, wow, this person had some big role or did something, and you just learn so much more about a person when you're in their home versus when you're in a sterile office.
100%. And you mentioned listening is so important, and that's something that you'll have to teach me after we finish the episode. But how do you learn, besides national trial lawyers, and probably other seminars, but what other techniques, or how do you teach yourself or practice the listening skills, really?
I think that, my wife would say I don't, that I got to work on it. I think you have to just, for me anyway, I don't know what works for everybody else, but for me, I have to force myself to stay focused. I have a bad wandering mind. I, can daydream at any point in time and start thinking about a million other things.
Well, don't we all?
Yeah. And so I really work very hard at, when I'm with a client, put the cell phone away, put everything away, and give all my attention to the client. And, if we want to take a break, then I can check my cell phone or whatever, but I try to be as focused as I possibly can on the client. And I don't know I don't know if there's some training that I don't know that there's any of that I've done. I know that, we at the Trial Lawyers College do listening exercises where you learn to can repeat back what they're talking about, try to understand their emotions, things like that. And I think anything that you do that gets you to listen is very, very helpful.
Very interesting. So, Geoff, what challenges or some challenges you face when trying to get clients to open up, and how do you get them to open up?
So I think that there are several challenges. I think we talked about a few of them earlier, but one of them is very few people have been exposed to the legal system. And so we end up, I have clients, wait, do we have to tell them that? Why do we have to talk about me getting arrested, several years ago? And we have to convince them that your secrets are safe with me. And I know what I'm doing. And if I say we need to tell the other side because the law requires it, I'm right.
Mhm.
And you have to develop that trust. And because if they think that they can't trust you, then they might hide information from us. And if they do that, the other side finds out, you're toast. And so I think that's one of the things that we need to do is get them to be confident that we know what we're doing. And once they feel that, then they feel like, okay, I can trust you. I can tell you whatever it is. And it makes a huge difference. I mean, I've had clients, I've learned it the hard way. I had clients that didn't tell us that, and it can be really ugly when they don't. So,
It's the worst. I've only seen those in the movies.
yeah,
You
yeah, I
know,
think
every attorney we tell you don't watch the movies because the real law versus movies are serious. It's totally different, 100%.
it fortunately hadn't happened to me in a while. I've tried
Mhm.
to do a much better job of making people feel comfortable. I mean,
Mhm.
because we all have skeletons in our closet, and
Mhm.
you better tell your lawyer about those. And if you're supposed to disclose them, you better disclose them.
Lawyers have to be a good psychologist throughout the whole case, just with good listening skills, understanding, comprehension, and just being able to develop that rapport with their clients. What advice, Geoff, would you give to other attorneys looking to improve their client relationships and deepen their understanding of their clients' experiences?
I think the first thing is to understand yourself as best you can. That I think is uh, maybe the most important aspect of understanding other people. It's very hard to understand others when we don't understand ourselves and what makes us tick. So that would be one thing. Um, and then I think, and I know that most of the lawyers that I consider my peers, they do this. When you take a case, a catastrophic injury case, you're representing a human, and you recognize that person as someone of equal worth, that they become a close friend, and you become someone that's responsible for them in many ways. And so if you adopt that mindset, then a lot of the things we've talked about, that kind of becomes natural. So you all of a sudden want to hear their story. You want to learn more about them. You want to learn what they were like before and what they're like after, not just because it's going to allow you to make a better presentation of the case. It will, but because you care about that person. So I think that's important. I think that establishing a culture in your firm where everyone views it that way. I mean, I don't mean to act like clients can't get annoying, and of course they can. But you have to learn how to treat them with the respect they deserve, and not let those irritations, impact that relationship. And so I think establishing a firm-wide culture is another very important thing about getting the kind of relationships with clients that can lead to both better case outcomes, but also a more fulfilling practice. And yeah, it's great to make money. We all like that.
Mhm.
But when you can look back and feel like you've really made a difference for someone, there's nothing.
It's invaluable, absolutely. And as we about to get to the end of our wonderful discussion, is there anything else you'd like to mention?
I mean, I just appreciate what you do, and the funding can be incredibly important. I've had clients. I had a client that was injured in a truck wreck, and he had a spinal problem, and he badly needed surgery. And he didn't have insurance. He didn't have any way to pay. He wasn't on Medicaid, and it was going to be very expensive. And he got the surgery because of a funding company, and it changed his life. He was able to recover far beyond what we had thought he would, and that was wonderful. And so what you all do is incredibly important to helping our clients that don't have the resources and won't have the resources until the case resolves. If it does, it may go unfavorably, and they need somewhere to turn to. And thank you for providing that.
Absolutely. And we're just truly blessed and honored and humbled to be able to make that difference in people's lives every day. Again, this was so great. I want to thank you, for our discussion about building trust and communication in personal injury law while supporting catastrophically injured clients. I hope it was informative and educational. And as promised, here's a fun pop question for you, Geoff.
Okay.
You ready?
Maybe we'll see if I'm ready.
Okay. If you could fast forward 5 years from today,
Okay.
what exciting advancements do you hope to see in your field?
So, I think 5 years from now, artificial intelligence is going to be very different than it is now.
Mhm.
And I hope that I think it's going to have an impact on our field. I don't know how it will. I hope that it's a positive one and takes out, you can do things like a medical chronology much easier with artificial intelligence as opposed to some of the more nefarious uses. There's a story, this happened, a lawyer writing a brief, I think in a federal circuit court, just used AI to do the brief, and AI made up cases that didn't exist, and the lawyer got in very serious trouble. So hopefully we won't see that as the AI, but that we can harness AI in a way that's positive for the profession and avoid some of the scarier possibilities that we all think about.
And talking about AI, interestingly, I had a conversation yesterday with an attorney, his nationwide known attorney, Guy DeAndrea, based in Philadelphia. And he is a guru in AI. So make sure you listen to that episode. It's coming out in a couple of weeks.
I can't wait.
But
Thank you.
He provided so much information. I definitely want to have him back on the podcast because it's so important to all of us in all our respective fields nowadays. And Geoff, if anybody is looking for your help, and of course, I wish these bad things would never happen to anybody, but God forbid if that happens and a family member needs help, how can they find you?
So you can give us a call, our 404-885-9999, Pope Trial Law on the website. You can shoot us an email, gpope@popetriallaw.com, any of those. And if all that's too hard, call Laura. She can tell you how to get in touch with us.
100%. Again, thank you so much for the wonderful time spent with you, Geoff, today. That was Trial Attorney Geoff Pope, a founding and managing partner of Pope Trial Law in Atlanta, Georgia. I want to thank you for listening and watching our episode today. For more tips and tricks on legal funding and the medicine related topics, follow me, like and subscribe to It's More for Injury Funding podcast, and also find me on moreinjuryfunding.com website on all social media platforms. I want to thank you for listening and viewing our episode today. Until then, be well. Thank you.
Thank you.